Welcome, Olivia. It's great to finally get this conversation on the books. And I know we've had some pinging around, but welcome to Crew Conversations. I'm really excited to have a quick chat with you this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much. It is a representation of how busy the crew community is that it's taken us a few weeks to get this on the books, but it's so great to be here. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would love to just kind of start with a quick overview of give us a 60-second verbal highlight reel of you and your career journey so far, just so we have that right out of the gate, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I would represent myself as being someone that has never been afraid to try new things. And I've been really guided by little sparks that happen throughout my career. As an example, I was working in public relations. I thought very much I was going to go into politics right out of college. I loved politics. I worked for the governor's office of California for 2 years of my college tenure. And then I started doing public relations, and there was an article on the front cover of the Chicago magazine where I was living at the time, and it said the top 20 places to work in Chicago. And the number one was the Four Seasons Hotel Chicago. And I thought, you know what an amazing way to travel and learn about hospitality. And so I took a pivot, applied for a job, took a downgrade from what I was doing. And this was back, nearly 20 years ago when I was very much starting out. And I would say my career has really been representative of that. When I see moments of opportunity, of change, I'll pivot. So I went and worked in the hospitality industry, starting with Four Seasons, then Peninsula, then the Taj Hotel Group, which was part of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Group at the time. And then I pivoted over to American Express and had an amazing career selling. There were some kind of bumps in the road, some excitement in the beginning because you had to really build out the pipeline, but then just had some amazing mentors that really helped me to learn and to grow, learned how to run a P&L, learned how to sell. And then, again, as other opportunities throughout the years have presented themselves, I talked to mentors. I talked to people that are part of Crew today about, hey, how would you approach this opportunity? What do you think? So I think that's, really indicative of who I am as a person, that I'm always willing to kind of see where there's opportunity to continue to grow and change and challenge myself professionally.
Yeah, that's an awesome background story that you have. Who was the governor at the time when you were working there?
It was Governor Pete Wilson. And that's a great question because full circle, 2 years ago, we were working on an event for the Reagan National Foundation, and they do a Reagan National Defense event every year at Simi Valley at the library there. And lo and behold, Governor Wilson was there with the First Lady, and we took pictures. And it was so many years later, and they were so pleased to have one of their former interns now in a more senior role at the Reagan National Defense event. So you never know where your story will take you, and when those previous mentors might be, kind of part of your future.
That is so cool. Yeah, I mean, because the California governor's office. I mean, that's a big deal. That's not every average one. It's like a country. So
it is a country, absolutely, it is a country. And I wouldn't say I had the highest level job. My job was literally reading the mail, and there was a policy that the governor and First Lady would always respond to every single invitation they received through a phone call, a personal phone call. So I was that person that would call people and say, with regrets, they will not be able to make it to this event or attend this event, or yes, they will be attending. So it was a really special role at a very junior age.
Yeah. And so when you look back at this journey so far, right, what's the thing that's been most exciting? What was the best part for you so far of the career journey?
There's so many, and I truly believe that the best is yet to come in many ways. But I think what's been most exciting is that I've had the opportunity to have positions where I've had the seat at very senior tables merely through the work that I was doing. I've always had I leaned toward the hospitality and the events industry. And in that, I was asked to really get involved in planning some of the most strategic and sort of business driver events that different companies that I've worked for, including American Express and MasterCard, Gartner, plan on an annual basis. So, one of my exciting moments is, sitting around the table with a president at, merchant services at American Express, and, looking at each other and really asking the question, what is our business objective here? Hearing that answer. And then, fast forward 6 months later, repeating, did we meet that business objective? And, that senior leader looking at me and saying, yes, we did. We'll do it again next year. So I think, as exhilarating as those moments are, because you are with such, kind of senior leaders, I think really being thought of and looked to as someone that can provide advice and being really good at your craft and your trade. I'm really good at hospitality. I'm really good at events. I'm really good at marketing. Is a real honor. And I think that's something that continues to exhilarate me. And, as I mentioned, I think the best is yet to come.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. And, to your point, you use the word sparks, these things that have kind of redirected you, and you've made some firm pivots, which is pretty cool. Not everybody does that, right? It shows a very entrepreneurial spirit that kind of is underlyingly inside of you. So, I mean, talk a little more about that process, right? Because I think a lot of us have things happen where with a door maybe cracks, or somebody makes a suggestion, or an idea pops up, but the decision about when to pivot and why, that's a very difficult one. And so what's been the impetus for you on when you did make these pivots? What got you over the hump?
Yeah, I think going back to my early days, what I didn't mention is that I was also part of the Sacramento Entrepreneurship Academy my senior year of college. And I spent 6 months with peers who had applied in, and they have a, kind of a class of, and I was in a class of really smart entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs. And the way the program works is that they'd have these senior leaders come in and meet with us every weekend. So it was a Saturday course, and talk about entrepreneurship and their path to entrepreneurship. And, the fact that there is a lot of bumps along the way if you are going to take these risks. And so that was part of my core. I'm also the daughter of two school teachers and educators, so I play it safe. So I've always really looked for, through the process of exploring my roles, where can I be that entrepreneur, but also have this safe place where I can provide for my family. And I've always had that in my different roles, including my role now. I'm an executive vice president at a pretty prestigious firm in New York City. And what I love about the role is that I'm constantly I have the autonomy to learn, develop, and create new pathways. But you asked about impetus. I think that I also rely heavily on my personal balance. I'm a huge, in Northern California, girl born and raised. Don't think I wore a lot of shoes in the first sort of 18 years of my life because I was outdoors so much. And I do, my best to escape back to finding my grounding. My grounding is nature, outdoors, running, yoga. And, on those days where I'm like, I just don't have time for a run, and I carve out that time for a run, and suddenly something happens. And I will often realize, and something will happen inside of me where I'll say, there was an email, or there was a story I heard in the news, or there was a podcast that I need to go deeper into. And, kind of referencing the Crew organization, there are many mentors, friends that I've worked with along the way that are now part of Crew that I'll call and say, hey, I have this really crazy idea. Can you help me work it through? So I think it's a matter of, finding your balance, not being so committed to being at your screen that you don't find, and everybody has a different one, and, it doesn't need to be outdoors running yoga, but everyone should find what helps them create those moments where that spark can happen.
Yeah. I love that example that you give, because I just think it's easier said than done for a lot of us, right? We just get into that busyness routine, and it's counterintuitive to think that breaking away is the way that you break through, right? Absolutely. And I think for a lot of people it is. And to your point, going to the comfort zone, to that freedom zone, it's where the mind gets open, right? It gets clear, it gets wise, it gets a lot of vision. You can't think hard, right? Through these tough decisions, through the big heavyweight decisions. You can't like grind out and pro and con it out on paper all the time. A lot of times you have to kind of detach, and with the detachment, it sounds like you find a lot of clarity, right? Or a lot of new vision and ideas, which is pretty inspiring and pretty cool. And then you act on it, which is the hard part, right? Because it's one thing to get it.
That's the hard part. I think it's also investing in community, whether it's the crew community or my community in where I live. My husband and I are both pretty active volunteers in different aspects of our community. I also really, this is going to sound a little counterintuitive, but I do really invest in the friendships that I have and the relationships I have with my family. I think that it's really easy to say, in a couple of years, I'm going to spend a bit more time with my parents. In a couple of years, I'm going to pick up the phone and call my sister more often. But they are my lifeblood and have been a source of energy for me for many, many years. My brother, who is a really successful business person, he's on speed dial, but it's also because, I send him funny notes and say, I'm thinking of you. And I know you've got a big deal going, I'm sending you sister love. And so I think that, you have to be careful, because tapping into your community means that you're also feeding your community. And I think that is something that is really important. It's, I hate to say it in this framing, but, don't ask for a favor unless you've fed that relationship and fed that community. I think that's important to note. And that has given me a lot of energy to say, I just need to talk to you because I've got this really interesting thing that's being worked through in my mind. Can you help me? I want to be able to apply it back to my professional life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen that from you firsthand in your crew involvement, as far as the go-giver mentality before thinking about what you're going to get. And again, I think it's such sage advice that you're kind of kicking out there from a reflection standpoint, because you think all these folks that are so ambitious and so driven that they're in their own tunnel vision lane. And actually, most of the ones you speak to, or a lot of them like yourself, they're getting to the next step, right? They're figuring things out because they actually invest outside of themselves. They invest in other people, right? They invest in things bigger than themselves. So it's really inspiring to kind of hear the ways that you're kind of plotting your course and hitting your aspirations, but again, not through just your own traditional, tunnel vision lens on. So let's talk a little bit about the balance piece again, because, you're a mom, right? So, and you're ambitious and you've made some pivots and like you said, it's all about kind of the calculated risk taking. And so what is work-life balance for you at this point? You've got these personal hobbies, you've got that first foundational 18 years of what was at your core. How do you do it, right? Like, what's your how of staying in a what you feel is a balanced state?
Right. So I'll be really honest. It's not always balanced. And
Sure.
I think it's important to hear that, because I think through the world that we live in today, whether it's social media or the persona that we project out or we want people to believe, it's very easy for others to look and say, oh, well, she just makes it look so easy and she can do, and that's not actually the case. I talked about my community and I talked about my family. I rely a lot on their source of inspiration and stability. But I do get a lot done. And the way that I'm able to balance what I perceive to be the most important role of my entire life, which is being the mother to my beautiful daughter, is I take my time very seriously. So if you saw my desk right now, you'd see that I've got, I write notes, I recheck my calendar every day. I am so in control of my time because inevitably there are little things that happen that I'm not expecting. So it's kind of a rule of thumb. I tend to block my Tuesdays away from calls, Tuesdays and Fridays. Otherwise, there's no time for work. And at the end of the day, I need to produce really good work. And I also really try to give myself a bit of a break. I know that I'm doing my best. I know that there are so many other mothers that are doing so much more in terms of volunteering inside the classroom and I think that it's important that we don't compare ourselves, kind of going back to what I said before. I am doing my absolute best. And for me, that includes 1 hour once a month volunteering in my daughter's library from 8 to 9 a.m. So yeah. Your traditional volunteering hours. But that's that's where I was able to figure it out and work where I can be with her and she can see me volunteering. And that's important. We also do spend a lot of time. We're big fans of sort of, I know these are little silly things, but we are sacred about our family movie night. We love movies. We watch it as a family. We were so excited. My daughter and I started singing when she was very little, when I was commuting into the city more often. We'd sing like, it's Friday, it's Friday. And that's our kind of our chant every Friday. And so I think it's about establishing rituals with your family and your children that you can actually commit to. And when you're inside of those, being fully committed to them. And then also managing your time so that the things don't bleed in, so that if you have said to your child, I will be at your flag football practice, you're able to do it. Now, a lot of things come up. And again, I am an honest mom, and it is a lot about, sweetheart, I did my very best. I have to get on a plane tomorrow. And it doesn't mean I don't love you, but I've done my best. And my job is also to take care of our family and take care of those that are relying on me professionally. And so I've just been always very transparent with her that I want to be with you, but here's the commitments I have to make. So I think time is precious and needs to be managed really well when you're caring for others.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And it's inspiring. I love the rituals component that you're sharing there as far as for the family dynamic is concerned. It's making me think about like rituals that it's easy, like you kind of have them, but like literally formalizing them. That's such a cool thing. And it's actually an indirect way to kind of keep yourself accountable to some of that stuff as well. Right. When it's movie night, I mean, you're going to make sure that you're there for it. So that's really neat.
Yes, absolutely.
What's the biggest, let's like try and pop under the hood a little bit. I mean, reflectively, none of us are perfect. Like, what's the thing that you think you're most aware of that you're working on that is an area of opportunity that you want to be, that you're trying to become better at? Anything?
I think that probably a lot of, I'll speak to women, right? Like, so I have a female perspective. I believe that we as females are very good at having this sort of matrix in our head of all the things that need to happen. And I don't know that I'm always great at sharing what that matrix actually means for my husband or our nanny. And so I'm definitely working on giving up a little, as much as I want to manage my time and control my time. I think it is important to continue to reflect that others can probably do things, maybe not as well as I do them, but they'll get done. And I think that that's an important piece for me personally that I'm always working on. I'm a perfectionist. I like things done a certain way. I like things to be really beautiful and neat and organized. And so I think relinquishing some of those needs is important for all of us, men, women, et cetera. But I think that women tend to hold a lot in, and then, kind of carry this moment in your belly of like, well, why isn't anybody helping me? And you have to kind of reflect and say, well, no one knows how to help you because it's all right there. So.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. What about then just like a superpower then? Like, what's something that you truly believe, that it's your gift.
Yeah.
It's your biggest lever that you can pull and leverage to a positive extent.
Yeah. I have a really good ability to connect with people. And I have these amazing Northern California roots. I mentioned, kind of outdoors all the time, horses, chickens, very connected with the earth. And I also didn't come up with an extremely sort of privileged background. And I've, as we talked about, sort of always pushed myself outside of my comfort zone. So I'm a really good waitress. I'm a really good gardener. I'm a phenomenal cook. And so what I like about who I've become is that there are a lot of different skill sets that I can rely on that don't necessarily only involve work. I have a lot of work to do in a lot of areas, but I'm really proud of the superpower that I can sort of pivot into, Adam, when you invite me over to your house and you're like, I just don't know what to do in my garden. Boom, we'd have a fun afternoon together. And so I like that my superpower is that I'm not one dimensional, that I have a lot of different dimensions. Yep. That superpower allows me to walk into a lot of different rooms with very different people and find connection points because, I can usually find a thread with any type of person that, perhaps we never thought we'd have anything in common. And all of a sudden we're talking about something that is a really shared, love of outdoors, or love of gardening, or love of cooking, or a professional, love that, business area that we both share. So I think that is a superpower.
Yeah, no, it's a powerful one. It's like the art of balance, right? I mean, you can do a lot of different things well and passionately and with authentic curiosity. Where do you think, by the way, if you could get me to enjoy gardening, that would be an amazing superpower, because I definitely would need help, and I definitely am not in my best, mental state if I had to put that on my to-do list. So that's impressive.
You're not alone. You're not alone.
Yeah. But you talk about the California roots, but like, what about that kind of, what gave you such open-mindedness, or such, diversity of interest and talents? Like, what is there something in particular about the journey that you were on that really steered that?
I don't know where exactly it steered, but I will give credit where credit is due. My parents, I'm an identical twin, and being an identical twin is very complicated at times because everyone wants you to be the same, and if you're not, they compare you. And so my parents, who are really smart, really encouraged my sister and I to find and be very different. And so it almost forced us to keep, kind of striving. I've lived in Massachusetts, I've lived in Connecticut, I've lived in New York City, I've lived in San Francisco. And all of those sort of moves happened after my father passed away when I was in my early 20s. And my mother, to her credit, instead of saying, sort of stay here and take care of me, she put my sister and I both back on planes to the respective states that we were living in and said, you have to go, you have to go, you have to go live your life, and you have to keep challenging yourself. And so I think that, it's something that I think about when I'm parenting my own daughter, that it is very easy to hold close to you things that you don't want to lose. And I think that also goes for leading teams, that if you have individuals on your team that you really want to either keep, and you don't want the competition to get them, or you don't want them to keep growing because it's better for your business if they stay, sort of the same thing. Like, the amazing things happen when you let people go and you let people find their truth and their true happiness. So I think it is, not to make it sad, but I think I had a pretty sort of traumatic experience losing my father so young, and we were incredibly close. But in hindsight, I think it really triggered my mom to push my sister and I further than we may have otherwise.
Wow. There was a ton of powerful examples there, between the twin examples and the moves and like you said, the loss and everything. So no wonder, actually, now that I hear that, no wonder you're able to be so diverse in your interests and in your openness and thoughts. It's pretty impressive. You should be proud of yourself. Yeah. What's the what piece of advice or wisdom would you give to somebody that's kind of coming up in their career, right? And they're trying to figure it out, and they're very aspirational, and they're very open-minded, and they're very talented, and they can do a lot of things. Anything in particular that's kind of like, a mantra that you would probably share that's kind of at your core from advice standpoint?
Yes. So I think this answer might surprise you, but I think it's really important to know how to do the work. So, when a house is being built, and a really good house has a great foundation. And I think that it's very easy to be so ambitious that you forget to do the work, that you're playing the politics game, which, by the way, is incredibly exhausting and time consuming. And it takes away from really learning how to do the work. Now, I don't want this to come across that you can't delegate anything, or you have to, you shouldn't call on team members to help you, or if there's more efficient ways to do it, particularly with all these amazing AI tools. There's so many ways to be more efficient. But I do think about the fact that the world keeps changing in every which way. And the people that I want to be shoulder to shoulder with in times of good and times of challenge, professionally or personally for that matter, are those that really know how to do the work and are not afraid to roll up their sleeves. It's a small example, but I've spent a lot of time at different events, and you'll have a team of 30 people. You've got your production, you've got your marketing people, you've got your suppliers, and you can tell when there's new team members, those that have been, as my mom would say, they had to make their bed. Like they had to really get in there and do the work, and someone else wasn't doing it for them. And I think it's really important that I think that there's a decorum and a deference that we need to know how to actually get the work done and have done it to a certain extent. And I think that that would be for someone coming up through the ranks right now. It is really important to pause and say, okay, 20 years ago, how was marketing done? And I see it's getting done so much more efficiently now, and I've got all those tools, but at the end of the day, marketing is about really great messaging and connecting with customers and being passionate about the customers. If you don't understand that because you haven't taken a moment to watch that customer come through the hotel and talk to the concierge and then check into the front desk, you don't really know how to market that hotel. So that's a small example from my experience where I think it is really important to know how to do it.
It's really good point, because your point, there are tons of tools and there's tons of all the rage is talking about how you leverage those tools, but the key to who's going to leverage those tools the best is the people that have kind of the biggest foundational frame of reference, right? To what do you even ask these tools to do, right? Like what can be the dot connecting that you can do, right? And yeah, I agree with you. I just think too many people, that's the challenge of today that I'm so worried about even passing on to my son, of everything is right at your disposal because of technology, because of tools. And so you've lost the big scheme of things, that everything worth having is normally a 10-year thing. I mean, it is, right? If almost everyone I talk to them, like, and I look back at their journey of how they're at this admirable state. If you look back, it was 5 to 10 years minimum journey, right? And twists and turns and mistakes and setbacks and learning and like you said, sleeves rolled up before they got there. And if you don't have that patience and that level of persistence and perseverance, the tools are worthless.
They're
Right?
totally worthless because you don't know how to use them. You don't know how to
Yep.
tell the AI tool what to do if you haven't actually done the work or, kind of had the experience that informs the information you need to tell the tool what to do.
Yeah.
So I am with you on that. And I think for me, I don't know that this is the right wording, but I think that there's a bit of a lost art of just the elegance of being a great ambassador of your brand and showing up and caring about your professional presence and the way that you're going to make other people feel when you walk in a room. I think that it's important, whether it's a Zoom call or you're at a networking event, that you are showing up as though you're there to learn, but then you're also there to respect that others have come before you and what can you learn from them. I think that it is an important quality, one that I can do myself. So, not to say that I've achieved this. This is something that I think about before going into any sort of networking or business setting. I'd like to be prepared and show up with the respect that there are others there that know a heck of a lot more than I do, and I could probably learn from them and probably offer them some advice as well. So that's the approach I tend to take in those types of experiences.
Love it. Yeah. It's back to your open-mindedness and adaptability there. Right. It just it goes into that form as well. I think it's great advice. So I know we're getting a little bit long here. Well, I want to just think about like any regrets that you have and, like mistakes, failures. And is there one that sticks out in particular, and what did you learn from it?
I think that I have a lot, and I'm constantly, I mentioned, my friends and so forth. I'm always through. I think that I spent a little too much time in my 20s, probably thinking too much about setting up for my family future, what that would be like. And I think that there's a lot of pressure in your 20s when you've got friends that are getting married and kind of diving into the domestic life. And as soon as I caught myself about 5 years in, I caught myself kind of too focused on where I was going and not doing the work. I caught myself, and then I sort of refocused and said, this is my profession. I am a hospitality, event marketing, customer oriented person, and I'm going to find and carve out a career to do that. A regret might be inside of that I reflect sometimes on, should I have gone to get a master's of business. And I've corrected that a little bit. I've done some really amazing courses with different, prestigious universities since then. But I think that that's something to think about, is that, especially for those that are kind of early in their career, I think it is easy to focus too much on where you're going, rather than letting kind of engineering the journey versus just letting it experience and, kind of come to you through really great work and experiences and travel and so forth.
That's such good advice. I feel the same way about, if I think about my 20s, just the pressure and the expectation level that starts to set in, like once you hit your mid 20s, at least for me, it did, or back then it did. Right. I don't know if they feel that way now if they're in their 20s, but it is great advice. I mean, it's just the way that this thing's going to play out, the windy road that you're going to end up on. Such a better way to think about it is to surf that thing and let some of it play out and not put so much pressure on yourself, right? It's difficult. It's hard. High expectations without like undue pressure. How do you balance that? And I think that's the key,
It is. And I think it's also being in flow with yourself and understanding and taking the time to get to know yourself and like yourself, I think is an important part of the journey. And in our 20s, I think that at least I spent a lot of time reflecting on where I wanted to go versus just where I was, and enjoying that moment. Again, it all worked out great, and I have this amazing family, and, I have a life that I am so proud of. But I think if you're in your early 20s, just ride the wave, have fun.
Yeah. And don't compare so much, right? It's like the other thing that everyone's comparing where everyone's at on career and family. And it's like everyone runs their own race. I mean, I think that's the main thing too. The comparison game is a killer. At all phases of life, but I think there's certain pockets, like in a school phase, then in the 20s phase, maybe a little bit like when we're approaching the 50-year-old phase, right? Where it's just the comparison game. It can be overburdening, So
my husband says something often, which is, we've got to back ourselves. And I do think about that a lot, where I think it's also sort of backing yourself is, being open to the journey versus, again, trying to engineer the journey. So I would say that that's something that I reflect on a lot.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, last thing here, I'll just ask you is, your reason for why you joined us at Crew, right? I mean, and you already kind of shared that, because you shared it's part of your MO as far as branching out and giving and all of that. But anything else that you'd share with the community as far as, we were very early days when you joined us. So, thank you, by the way, for that. And just anything else around kind of the concept of community and what that means to you.
Yeah. I mean, I touched on this a bit before, but I truly believe that, in a way, sort of when called, you answer. And I knew well and saw the way that you, Andy, others who have really founded Crew conducted yourselves, going back to how do you show up. And to me, it was just an absolute, kind of, didn't take me even more than a few minutes to think through that it was authentic, that it was a place where I could confidentially seek advice to continue to further my career, that it was a place that I could be my authentic self. And I think that that is something that you're really building, is something that is not for everybody. I think that's an important to distinguish. But for those that are part of it, I knew that it was a place where I could give and receive. And I think that that is exactly what a community is all about.
Yeah. Well said. And thanks for, I'm glad that that's what's cutting through to you as far as the core ethos, because that is what we're trying to cultivate. And it's because of members like yourself that are actually doing it that, that I think it's becoming honestly something that's beyond what we initially even envisioned. So super thankful to have you on the journey, Olivia. And it was fun to hear. I knew some of this stuff, but that's why these conversations are fun, because you do pull out little nuggets about folks that, until you have this kind of sit down, you maybe wouldn't have pulled out in the average meeting. So thank you for being an open book and sharing with us this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. A lot of fun, and I could talk to you forever. So thank you.
Yeah, it goes fast. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Crew Conversations. These conversations are for leaders, between leaders, and by leaders to inspire you to grow into the type of leader you want to become.